A couple of things. Firstly, I'm incredibly proud to be here with you just to kick off this next bit, because although we criticise ourselves on what we need to do, there are some amazing things that are happening in Queensland. Certainly you've heard it through the debate, but it's probably just worth recognising that while we want to keep pushing ourselves further, let's not criticise ourselves entirely. There's been some fantastic things happen already. I'll share a couple in a moment. We were going to, I think, statistically speaking, I looked at the stats earlier this morning when I built the presentation, and we'd asked people a question on, is science is business all about the money? Is science even interested in the dollar? And clearly people were polarised, but I'm fearful of the fact there's so many research people, there's bound to be a statistician in here, and at that time 7 people had answered, so I may not have a representative sample. So I'm going to hold back on using those stats for you, but suffice to say, wherever we work, and in this particular debate, we're hearing the same thing. Actually, people have differing points of view, but they're not actually counter to each other. They just have a different perspective. So I want to put that in the back of your mind just before we kick off. So this will be activity based, but just before we do, I want to share a bit of a thought with you, and it's in part a little bit of a concern. We kind of see, and not just a Price Waterhouse Coopers perspective, but I think many that share in the market, with somewhat of a crisis looming. There's good work going on right now, but the crisis that's looming that we really are here discussing, so let's call it the elephant in the room, I kind of put as corporate Australia has been we've been cutting costs. We're doing less in research and development by a long way. We're time pressure and we're looking for return on investment in much, much shorter cycles. That means we're spending less time trying to think about the new. And from the science part of the world, we're getting, there's a little more contestability. There's less dollars in funding to go around, quite frankly, and some of that funding gets skewed into topical areas which may not cover the wide spectrum. So we've got a bit of a challenge, but the real crisis bit that's looming, that sits underneath that, is actually we're forecasting 65% of jobs that will drive our knowledge economy, essentially a knowledge economy, require science, technology, engineering and maths, and we've dropped from about 24% graduate intake to about 22%, so we're on the decline in the very skills we need to foster. Now, rather than complain about that, I've sort of put it to the group here, and this is what will help drive our next discussion, isn't this the biggest opportunity that we have? Is we actually need to collaborate. We don't have the resources in corporate Australia that we need, and actually sitting within the great science, research and the startup community are those very, very resources that could actually help us foster some sense of collaboration. So I want you to kind of take that view into this next session, but I'll pose to you the key challenge here. The key challenge for us is, what is it that makes collaboration hard? And actually it's simple. It's less to do with structure, and it's all about people. Right? Collaboration, just like any relationship that people have, is built on trust. And we don't all naturally trust each other, particularly when we don't understand each other. So to that end, what we've done is we think we've found the answer. We've put the answer in an envelope, so for all of you at your table, don't open it yet, but just make sure you've got one at your table. Show of hands if you don't. Our logistics were perfect. Well done, Richie. Okay, don't open it yet. So the answer is sitting in here for each of your groups, if you can believe that. So what we're going to ask you to do is actually get involved now. Get involved in your tables, and here's the starting point of your answer. You're going to have a conversation. You're going to have to remove some of the barriers which we kind of have been alluding to through all of today, but maybe we haven't got down to the detail of naming them. So what we're going to ask you to do in just a minute, and it's going to be fast because the clock will be on, unlike my starting 5 minutes, the clock will be on. So what I'll ask you to do is, when we open the envelope, your first task will be as simple as this. You've all built some good networks. Show of hands, anyone who's sitting at a table, if you've met everybody at your table, you've built some bonds. Not too bad. Well, this will work. So if you're sitting at your table, what I want you to do is look across your table right now and think of someone at the table someone you haven't met yet, someone you don't know that well. I'd counter this by, have you formed a joint venture yet today? Have you forged a collaboration? So I want you to find that person, hopefully in a different field to what you work in yourself. So hold yourselves. I know you want to get there. There's dollars on the table if we're to believe the last debate. What I want you to do is start with a conversation. You're going to have 5 minutes each. The notes of the questions that you'll need to ask each other will be on the first page. It's really easy. It's called Task 1. What I want you to do is you've got 5 minutes. We're going to count the clock, and in that 5 minutes, all I want you to do is grab that other person and just interview them. Ask them these 3 simple questions and just take some notes for yourself. You've got your next task. This is task number 2. This is the really simple one. So before you just had a bit of a conversation about learning from each other. Here's kind of the danger in that. Just an observation we see quite often around innovating is it's really easy to have transactional conversations, right? So, but uncovering and asking that question, what do you really want? What's important to you? That's kind of the key to unlocking a little bit of trust, which is important here. So what I want you to do now is take your conversations to just one more level, and you'll see on task 2, for those of you, you all have it, but I'm going to read it out for you. What would you need to improve collaboration? Right? So what would you need? Not how can we change government in Australia, not how can we find millions of dollars that may or may not be there. What do you need to make you feel comfortable with collaborating in the context of what we've been talking about? So the person who is doing the interviewing, get your pen and your post-it note. I want you to ask that question and write it down for that person. Then you're going to swap roles. When you've got that, kind of show of hands with your post-it note, and we're going to be ripping through and collecting those from you. We've sort of been capturing what everybody's been saying, and there's always a danger in this. You're going to hear some things which, of course that's the case. However, if of course, then it raises the question, what are we doing about it? Okay, so a couple of things. Interesting on the failure side. So we asked kind of what were your fears? What were your fears? These are kind of the top 10 or so that were coming out. And so failure. So there's a fear of failure in collaboration, which is interesting. Missing out. I think that's a good fear. That could be, I think that is more a potential for a positive there. No funding. Idea theft. Losing relevance. Relying on others. So trust again. It being a distraction, I assume, from your business as usual, your tasks at hand. Litigation. So, lawyers in the room? All right, we need them. And disruption. So they were some of the fears. So we kind of were questioning. The commentary around disruption was actually not a disruption to your day job. It was about a fear of being disrupted as an organisation. So I suppose we look at the fears of these are obviously the things to avoid. But here's the hopes. And now a challenge for us in a room, and let's just test this at the end, but what helps us get this ingredient moving forward is the hopes have kind of got to be more important and outweigh the fears or the things that are our barriers. So the hopes, success, happiness, the scientists in the room clearly on the next one, make money. We know that clearly from Jeff before. Expand business, international growth, funding, have fun. And the last one, which is kind of the one which I'm excited to see because it kind of talks to the duration of the collaboration that I think Queensland is trying to foster here, which is a great future for my kids, right? Which is, I think, gives us a bit of a sense of the things that we're talking about we can't be short-sighted on. We can't expect from a business context that collaboration is going to yield me cash in my 12-month P&L cycle, and from a science perspective that every conversation is going to yield to some sort of commercial fruit just because we have it. It takes a level of iteration. So, show of hands if people are surprised by any of those. There's no one sure. I've asked it the other way. Nobody wants to put their hand up. No, I think you're right. I think they're exactly the things we would all expect to hear. There's kind of the second part though, we asked you about barriers. We sort of said, what's getting in front of you that stops you on this collaboration? Because we're all people who've taken slightly different career paths, but essentially everybody in this room shares some level of commonality and interest in what we're doing. Trust was the recurring theme. That's the barrier. Some perception of trust that if I get together with another organisation, suddenly our secrets will fall apart. We kind of talked about this when we looked at open innovation for Queensland, of getting the government together with the startup community, and this fear of, well, how do we protect the IP, and what if people feel they have an idea, and is there a misuse of that? Interestingly, it never seems to come up to be the problem when people come together over a common agenda. Time, we all get that one, although we gave a whole day of our business lives, our incredibly busy lives today, just to this conversation. So I suspect that's a barrier we'd be willing to jump over. Finding the right and willing partners. This one was probably one of the second most dominant that came out from all of you. It seemed to be a little bit about, there's a lot of people in this room, and I would suspect not even representative of all the talent pools that you could tap into here in Queensland. Very difficult to know who's who and who's doing what. So it's knowing the ecosystem. I think the second part, which was the willing. Who are the people who are putting signals out there saying that they're willing to collaborate? And the last two, which came together, shared purpose, or shared vision and clarity of purpose. That seemed to be the other. That was the most dominant, actually, of what came out from all the tables. A barrier, a way to get over the barriers would be to actually have something in common. So I suppose on that, we're going to grab all that information. We can share it out with all of you, but I think as a group of leaders sitting in the room, you can reflect on all those thoughts, but I don't think it's the bullet points that matter. I think we all have a sense of what it's about tackling. Balancing out, is the opportunity greater than what some of our personal fears might be, and what are the things we can put in place to get over that? So if you like, I'd like to kind of leave this out or round this out with a little bit of a formula of the way we would look at it. I kind of want to give you three things, just three things to take away and consider in how you might do business together, given that you come from different backgrounds, given that you have different aspirations, in fact, different sets of fears that are driving some of you, entirely different sets of hopes. Okay, so we'll give you this. We say rule of three because I think that's what we say to remember. This is truly just three simple things, okay? We've got to, just to frame it, we've got to be believing that 1 + 1 equals greater than 2. It's a pretty simple maths, right? I'm not maths orientated, but I can do that one, okay? We have to believe that even though each one of us here has a set of great skills, either access to markets or brilliant ideas, that actually it's in the two of those coming together is where we get a true benefit. So the three rules that kind of are going to make that happen. Number one, you just did it. Start the conversation. So actually start to get out of your comfort zones of the things you do in business and have a conversation with your peer group. You will only find out who those ecosystems are out there if you go and explore, if you're genuinely curious about it. The government can do a lot. Business councils and chambers of commerce can do a lot, but they can't do it all. You have to genuinely have a level of curiosity to find out who's sitting in this market, who's got the same kind of appetite as you. The second rule, and this is probably the most important, which is going to, once you start the conversation, this is what's going to help it flow. Suspend judgment. So say that, suspend judgment. One of the biggest challenges when we go and talk, and you will have felt it, in the starting point of your conversations, kind of start a bit transactional. We really asking the questions, I've got something in my back pocket, I want to sell it to you. Can we just get to that point of the conversation here? Did anybody feel that? Anybody have that experience? Geez, you're genuine people up here. I'm a Queenslander, but I've been living in Sydney way too long. Geez. Or you guys aren't being completely honest. So suspend judgment. That's kind of a bit of a critical one here. That's what gets it flowing, because you'll take enough time to just explore what these two attributes are that might add a bit of value. And this is the final one, and this is kind of, I suppose, to me, the most important formula. I kind of have a saying, it's a little bit cliche, but so when you're thinking about trust and, I don't want to share my idea, ideas are worth nothing. Okay? So I'll be provocative here intentionally. Ideas are worth absolutely nothing. It's what you can do with those ideas in the market is where the power and the value is, right? So sitting on your idea and keeping your idea doesn't take it anywhere. So what do you got to do? How do you reorientate yourselves? So I'll give you a little catch cry that I use, and it's, what am I about? Looking for problems worth solving, right? You're problem finders. Ideas are what kind of come from finding. We've got some nods there. Good. I stole it from you guys. But in all honesty, this is what it's about. You will find the best commonality. You will cut through all of the other challenges by actually starting with a common problem set. It's then okay if you've got different ideas or different aspirations personally about what you're going to do with those ideas, because you'll actually at least have a common framework or something that's a little more noble and a little more important than the ideas you start with. So that really is the basis. A pretty simple formula. Your kids probably expect less than that of you. So that's where we would leave it for you today from this session. Hopefully you got to start the conversation. Hopefully you picked up a couple of ideas and just ways to keep progressing that conversation forward. So thank you for your time.